What's up, guys? This is Manoj Puptani. I welcome you all on behalf of the Edipedia world. This is the fourth video presentation in which I'm going to discuss with you the remaining topic, a few more topics relating to CIS environment. So, are you guys excited about the same? Perfect. Fasten up your seatbelts. We're about to take off with the first topic of the day, and that will be with consideration of control attributes by the auditors. So, what all are the different kind of control or attributes that need to be considered by you if in case you are auditing some of the things in place? So, guys, in evaluating the effect of control, you as an auditor, you need to assess one thing, that the reliability of the controls basically by considering the various attributes of a control. So what all can be the attributes of a control? Number one, once you enter into a premise, okay, you need to check whether there are some of the internal controls existence in place or not, whether those controls are in place and are they like functioning as desired or not. Number two, go with the generality versus specificity of controls method. Generality versus specificity of a control with respect to various type of errors and irregularities that might occur. General control basically it inhibit the effect of wide variety of errors and irregularities as they are more robust to change controls in the application subsystem, which tend to be very much specific control. So because the component in these particular subsystems execute the activities that have very less variety. So go by this particular control, that is generality versus specificity, wherein you'll be able to know, okay, this is something very general, okay, and that is going to affect the complete financial statements. Whereas if I'll talk about something with relation to any particular stuff, wherein that's going to have a very much bigger impact, but only with that particular stuff, still you need to keep that specificity of controls as well in your mind. Next comes whether the controls act to prevent, detect or correct errors or not. You as an auditor, you should focus, okay, on a few of the things. Number one, preventive controls. Controls which basically stops the errors and irregularities from occurring. These are the ones which are known as preventive controls. Next, they are the detective controls. So the controls which are going to basically identify the errors and irregularities after they occur, that are detective. Something has already happened and then you are going to detect it. Okay, something has not happened and before it's happening, you are going to ensure that it's basically prevented. So preventive are the controls which stops the errors from occurring. Detective are the ones which are identified once the errors or irregularities have already happened. And when if I'll talk about corrective controls are basically the ones which remove the effect of errors and irregularities after they have been identified. This is the third one. Okay, this is actually going to remove the effects basically of all the errors which have like already been done after they have been detected. Next will be that you as an auditor, you should expect to see high density of preventive controls at early stages of processing. Let's suppose if somebody asks me which one is a better control, preventive, detective or corrective, it's always preventive. It's always better to have prevention rather than to have a cure. Why is it recommended? Why? Because you don't have to go through all that pain and problems. Okay, so auditors need to have that kind of expectation where they can see high density of preventive controls at the early stages of processing, or conversely I should say they should expect to see more detective and controlling controls later in the system processing, but they should have a keen idea that they'll see preventive controls more and in a near place rather than the detective and the corrective controls. The last one will be the number of components that are used to execute the control. This is something which is very important. Okay, there are n number of components which will be used to have that control. Okay, that will be done. If in case you don't have ample amount of components which are not sufficient, which are not appropriate, and you are using them to execute the control, will the same be happening? Absolutely not. Multi-component controls are more complex and more error prone basically. So, but they are usually used to handle the complex error and irregularities. So everything should be available in place, and that's going to happen in such a situation wherein you get to know that yes, anything can be required at any moment of time. So multi-component control are having their own positives as well as negatives as well. So you need to keep that in mind as well. So these are the control attributes that you need to consider while you are auditing any of the place. Check whether this control is in place or not and whether the same is being functioned as desired. You need to check with the generality versus specificity of control measure as well. Check whether the controls act to prevent, detect or correct errors or not. And finally, check the number of components that are used to execute that control on time. So I hope you guys got the complete clarity with respect to each and every stuff which I told you up here as well. So, shall we proceed, guys? Let's move towards the last topic of this presentation, and this will be with relation to internal controls requirement under the CIS environment. So, guys, the requirement of internal control under any kind of CIS environment is going to cover various kind of following aspects. Okay, number one comes in as the organizational and management control. Okay, so guys, controls are basically designed to establish a organizational framework for all the CIS activities that are going on. Okay, so you need to have those policies, you need to have those procedures, you need to have all these things which are relating to your control functions, and you need to have that appropriate segregation of the incompatible functions. This is something which will be covered under organizational and management control. Next, if I'll talk about the application systems development and maintenance control. So now here the controls are basically designed to provide reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance about what? That the systems are developed and maintained in an authorized and efficient manner. In order to establish your control over testing, conversion, I'll talk about implementation, your documentation of the new revised system. To all those changes will have been made in the application system in order to provide you the access to all those system documentation towards your acquisition of any of the application system from third parties. All these things will be covered under application systems development and maintenance control. Okay. Number three would be the computer operation control. Now you'll be thinking why computer operation controls is in place usually. So these are the ones which are designed to control the operation of the entire system. System is very important. Okay. If I'll talk about the computer system, so they are basically designed to provide you the control over the system of operations. Okay. And to provide you reasonable assurance that the kind of systems that are used for authorized purposes only. Number one. Number two, that the access to the computer operation is actually restricted to the authorized person or not. You need to check that whether the same is being used by another person who don't have the authorized access. Stop him or her any of the way around. So you need to check whether the access to the computer operation is restricted to those authorized personnel only, and only authorized programs are being used. You as an auditor need to check that as well, that only authorized programs are being used. Unauthorized programs are just avoided. Okay. Next, that the processing errors are being detected and corrected as well. So you need to check that whether the same processing errors are being detected and corrected on time or not. Next, these are the things which are going to be covered under your computer operation control, if I'll talk about. Next comes in as a system software control. What's going to be covered under your system software control? That the kind of controls that you are having, these are designed to provide you the reasonable assurance that the system software is acquired or developed in an authorized and efficient manner. And it includes basically your authorization, your approval, your testing, your implementation, and your documentation of the new system software and system software modification. And do ensure that the restriction of the access to the system software is only available to the authorized personnel. You as an auditor need to check that. Number one responsibility lies with the management, obviously. But having said that, you as an auditor also need to check that. Next comes in as the data entry and program control. So data entry and program control are basically designed to provide you assurance that the authorization structure is basically established over a transaction which is being entered into the system. You need to have that authorization structure, whether it is actually being prepared, this entry which that person has made, whether he was supposed or whether he was authorized to pass that entry or not, whether the same is being approved by an authority or not, and whether the second next level authority which is going to check the approval for that person also as well. So you need to have that data entry and program control. Also, that the access to the data and program is also restricted to the authorized personnel. This is something which is very common in all these points. Okay, you need to have and ensure that all the data and program which use and access to it is restricted to the authorized personnel. Then comes your control over input. So controls are basically designed to provide you the reasonable assurance that what do you suggest by what do you think about control over input? That the kind of input, the kind of transactions which are going on into the system, are they properly authorized before being processed into the computer or not? Number one. Number two, are they accurately converted into the machine readable form and recorded in the computer data files or not? Number two. Number three, you need to check and ensure that no transactions are lost, added, duplicated, or improperly changed. This is something which is very crucial, guys. And you need to check incorrect transactions are rejected, corrected, and If necessary, they are resubmitted on a timely basis. This is something with relation to the control over input. Now, if I'll talk about something in relation to the control over processing and the computer data files. So controls are basically the ones which are designed to provide the reasonable assurance that the transactions, including the system generated transactions, these are properly processed by the computer, number one. And then the transactions are not lost. They are not added duplicately. They are not improperly changed. And then all the processing errors are identified and corrected on a timely basis. This is something which will be like happening with relation to your processing of files itself during that time. Lastly, if I'll talk about something in relation to the output. So what's going to happen in case of your control over output? So that is going to, these controls are going to provide you the reasonable assurance that the result of your processing are accurate, number one. Number two, that the access of your output is restricted only to the authorized personnel. No other personnel who is not authorized, they are not going to see that. Okay. Number three, that the output is provided to appropriate authorized personnel on timely basis. Time is very much important, guys. Efficiency, basically I should say that effectiveness is always wonderful if in case that comes up along with efficiency. So timely basis, you're getting the output on time or not, that is something which is extremely important. Apart from that, there are some of the other safeguards as well, just like offsite backup of the data program, recovery procedures for use in case of event of theft, loss, or any intentional or accidental destruction. Then comes the provision for the offsite processing in the event of disaster. All these things are going to be covered in that particular case. So this was all about the kind of internal controls that are required to be like mandatorily completed under, if in case you are doing your auditing under any kind of CIS environment. So all these things and all these points need to be kept in your mind while you start your audit considering the CIS environment. So now my job with this particular presentation is over. All you need to do is just revise. Do revise the topic because that is something extremely important, guys. My efforts will go in vain. They'll be futile if in case you guys don't support me up. So believe me, I'm not here to support you up. I am begging for your support, guys, because I want you all to become my chartered accountants, my students, my friends, all the way. You're my guys, you're my girls. All that I am expecting out of you is that you'll be revising your topics and make us proud by becoming chartered accountants very soon. I welcome you on that front, guys. Believe me. Perfect. With this, I'll say thank you on behalf of the Edupedia world. Keep interacting by our questions, queries, and YouTube comment boxes. I will love to answer each one of your queries and grievances. If in case you have liked our video, do give us a thumbs up. That will be like really a appreciable move. Stay connected. That will help us in understanding on each way better, guys. I'll see you in the next presentation with some more fascinating and exciting topics.